Mr. Kubilius for a minute and a half.
President, Mr. Vice President, first of all, I would like to say that the EPP fully supports this recommendation reports prepared by Petras Auštrevičius, because we fully support Belarusian people in their democracy revolution under the leadership of Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya and Coordination Council. As we know, people of Belarus for 10 weeks in a row are continuing their protests. The European Parliament, among all other EU institutions, till now was showing clear and most dynamic political leadership in support for Belarusian people. President of Parliament David Sassoli was first to invite Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya to visit Brussels. That was a very important visit, which was followed by other high-level meetings. Today we need to ask ourselves, what else can we do, very practical, as Parliament, as members of this House? My three very short ideas. First, without further delay, by the decision of the leadership of Parliament, let's create a high-level Belarusian mission of former presidents and prime ministers, like it was done with the Ukrainian mission of Kwasniewski and Cox. That is a way how we can consolidate our position inside of the EU and to increase pressure not only on Lukashenko but also on Putin. Second, let's join our efforts with Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya headquarters and let's assist them with the establishment of their information centres here in Brussels and maybe later on in other capitals. And third, together with proper pro-democracy foundations, let's establish a special centre for international investigation of Amon crimes with a mandate to collect evidence and to assist with legal expertise in a start of individual criminal cases. Those are just few ideas what we can do. We, the whole EU, can do much more. Let's continue to be together with the people of Belarus and Живе Belarus.
Herzlichen Dank. Bevor ich jetzt das
Thank you very much. Before giving the floor to Mr. Pizzula, may I ask those who are contributing from afar, please keep a close eye on the clock. For a minute and a half now from Zagreb, Mr. Pizzula.
Thank you, Madam President. Arrests of presidential candidates and peaceful protesters, violent crackdown on opposition and civil society is a picture of Belarus today. We condemn it in the strongest possible terms. We cannot get tired of repeating that the violence and repression against the people of Belarus must stop and the new elections must be held. Cooperation with Belarusian authorities is not possible anymore as long as the regime continues brutal repression against the people and does not release all recent detainees and political prisoners. This is why the European Union must move from critical engagement to critical reassessment. To start with, European Union financial assistance must solely benefit the civil society. We, Socialist and Democrat group, also want to support the victims of repression, offer help to deal with the socio-economic consequences of COVID-19 pandemic. Also continue to engage with the people, no matter regarding walk of life. We fully support the extended list for sanctions that now includes Lukashenko too. Business as usual approach does not work in this case for a long time now. To conclude, we call on the European Union to reflect upon its approach to the Eastern Partnership countries that violate joint commitments on democracy, rule of law, fundamental freedoms and human rights. The European Union must take responsibility for the promise of security and prosperity in the common neighbourhood. Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank. Das hat ja hervorragend.
Thank you very much. Bang on schedule. Mr. Mariani is the next to take the floor for the ID group.
Européenne a fait pression sur Chypre pour que
The European Union put pressure on Cyprus in order to accept the sanctions against Minsk, but nothing has been done against Turkey with not being strong. We need calm in Minsk. We need to favor negotiation between the different parties and return to calm. The European Union claims to know the outcome of presidential election on the basis of a sociological investigation on internet. Well, if that's the principle that we start applying, will we be applying it tomorrow in Poland? Cuando those election, are we not doing exactly the same thing? Are we not painting ourselves into a corner by wanting at all price to accept that
Thank you. And now Ms. von Kramon-Taubadel for the Greens, a minute and a half.
2 months ago, Lukashenko stole the elections, and here we stand again, for the 4th time, debating what to do. While we debate, those who dare to speak up against injustice and violence are kidnapped, detained, imprisoned, beaten, tortured and raped. While we debate, athletes, scientists, journalists, doctors are purged, IT specialists expelled from the country, factory workers deprived of their income, parents and kids threatened and blackmailed. While we debate, Putin's Russia has encroached Belarus sovereignty, and the dictator in Minsk is ready to sell his country to save himself. Enough with debates, let's take actions. First, the sanctions list has to be updated and extended by everyone who executes Lukashenko's orders. We should also include those in the list who spread misinformation and propaganda from Russia. Second, those athletes, scientists, students, doctors, IT specialists who should be immediately given Schengen visas and get the opportunity to work here in the European Union. Third, all brutal regimes come to an end, and Lukashenko's dictatorship is no exception. We should be prepared for peaceful transfer of power and already now pledge financial assistance to a post-Lukashenko democratic government. This will be sent as a signal to the people of Belarus that the EU stands with them. In this process, the Parliament here should take the lead. Lastly, the source of Lukashenko's power is President Putin. The dictator can only afford to oppress his own people because he remains useful to the Kremlin. We cannot expect Putin to change. He will not become a reliable partner of the European Union. Instead, we should take decisive measures and send a clear sign that oppressing, annexing, occupying, poisoning will not be tolerated by the European Union.
Thank you very much. Next, for the ECR group, Ms. Fotiga has 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President, Mr. High Rep Vice President. Over 70 days of resolute protests of Belarusian people against the usurper president who uses all the power of the country against civilians. I commend Petras Austrevicius on his excellent report. It was a privilege to work on this file. His 3S is extremely important: solidarity, support and sanctions. Sanctions should be extended. And in terms of support, we have to think not only about future democratic, better Belarusian state, but currently about the overwhelming support to Belarusian people, not avoiding any governmental channels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from Ms. Villanueva Ruiz for 1 minute from Madrid.
Thank you, President. We are seeing in Belarus a huge mobilization against the electoral results that many consider fraudulent. We've seen a spiral of tensions, of people demonstrating requests for Lukashenko to step down. We will always defend the rights of anyone against abuses. Each people should be sovereign in deciding their internal matters. For this reason, we call on human rights to be respected. This week, we are also celebrating 1 year since the coup in Bolivia, and we're also keeping a keen eye on Chile, where there's also popular uprisings. In Russia and other countries, what we need is dialogue and diplomacy, avoiding escalation and immediate release of the detainees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, for a minute and a half, Mr. Andrzej Halicki.
Micro, please.
Yes, it's Szanowni Państwo.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Belarusian nation is waiting for a strong voice from the European Union, a strong expression of support and solidarity with the people who have been protesting on the streets of towns and cities for 10 weeks. Their determination is unwavering. They want freedom and democracy. They are more united than ever, just as we are united here in our expression of solidarity. We do not recognize the falsified election results. We call for the release of political prisoners, and we want a list of sanctions, but that is too little. We need to do more. We need to do more quickly, and we have the tools to do so. The Belarusians are waiting for us to act. They're waiting for support. They're waiting for help. And it's not just sanctions on Lukashenko. There are the hundreds of OMON officers who are beating people. We have the idea of a high-level mission which can help politically. We are ready to help the European Commission, which is working with the Coordination Council. We really do need to be more active, and we must help the Belarusians achieve a free and democratic Belarus. Long live Belarus. Thank you. Now from The Hague, Kati Piri has the floor.
Colleagues, High Representative, for the 10th weekend in a row, Belarusian people have gone out to the streets to protest against their illegitimate government, to protest against the violence and repression, and to let their voice for freedom be heard. And all this despite threats from the police to fire with live ammunition. To the brave people of Belarus, let me make this very clear. The European Parliament will not rest until your legitimate demands for free and fair elections are fully implemented, political prisoners are freed, and justice is served to all those guilty of torture and repression. This illegitimate president must step down today. And High Representative, continuing relations with the Belarusian authorities is an imperative no under the present circumstances. Our relations must only be with the Belarusian people. The Council decision to finally implement sanctions against Lukashenka is a much-needed first step. And the Belarusian people need us to urgently step up. I call on you to ensure meaningful international coordination of sanctions, redirect any EU funding away from the regime, and suspend negotiations over partnership priorities until a legitimate government is in place. Above all, the EU must ensure that we don't come empty-handed. We must provide any support necessary for the country's democratic transition in line with its citizens' aspiration. Thank you very much.
Herzlichen Dank. Nächster Redner.
Thank you very much. Next we'll hear from Ms. Wiesler Lima for a minute and a half.
Vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Dear Belarus, we shall remain true to you. We shall continue to support you in your quest for democracy in spite of brutality, arrests and even torture. We will be with you for as long as necessary in these debates in the European Parliament. Sanctions have been imposed on the people responsible for repression of peaceful demonstrators, journalists and members of the opposition. Lukashenko should have been on the list from the start, but he is now. High Representative, we have to fight impunity. We have to do more to fight impunity. I welcome the idea of a European Magnitsky Act. We need an investigation independent to take place in Belarus into the repression that has happened. This is something we owe to the victims. We also need to see a coordination of international efforts. The United Nations have a special rapporteur for Belarus. The Council of Europe is willing to play a role. The European Union must be in the driving seat when these things happen. We have to ensure that civil society gets the medical and psychological help that they need. And nominating Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya for the Sakharov Prize is a strong message from the European Parliament. Next from Bratislava, Ms. Lexman for a minute and a half.
Very much. Dear Chair, dear colleagues, I welcome the report drafted by Petras Austrevicius, and I want to say a special thank you to Petras and your team for working closely with all of us across the political groups to draft this very timely report. Dear colleagues, the situation in Belarus remains worrying. The regime continues to engage in repressions, the number of political prisoners is growing, while brave Belarusians are defying the regime's brutality and expressing their desire to live in a free, democratic and sovereign Belarus. I welcome that the Council finally adopted the targeted sanctions regimes against those repressing for the repressions in Belarus. I also hope for the EU global human rights sanctions regime to be adopted as soon as possible, that the European Union is better equipped to stand up to those who suppress people's rights and liberties, not just in Belarus, but globally. Finally, let me also state strongly that the European Commission must ensure that no financial assistance is given to the Lukashenko regime and that adopted €50 million and future finances must instead be used to support the people of Belarus. The European Union must stand with those people in Belarus and support their aspiration to live in a free, democratic, prosperous and sovereign Belarus. Živie Belarus!
Herzlichen Dank. Dann darf ich als nächstes das Wort
Thank you very much. And next we'll hear from the High Representative Vice President Borrell.